Hi there, welcome back to Heart Radiance Flutes with Thomas, and I want to talk about a couple of basics here on this video. The nature of the flute, just a little bit about it and how it's built so you understand, a little bit of maintenance things to keep in mind, how to position it to make sure that it's making good sound so that it will play well, things that you need to keep in mind to just protect it over time, and some basics on how to play. Yes, so I'm going to start by telling you here. So this is the drone flute. Now you might ask, how do you cut those holes in there? And really what the flute is these pieces get glued together, it gets cut in half, these channels are carved out, you make all of the parts for where the sound happens, which is, just so you know, is right here. This edge right here is a ramp, a very sharp little ramp where the sound happens. So I'm gonna come close. We have a little small airway here, and then there's another chamber. This is called the pre-chamber. And then this flat cap sits on top of the flute right here, and there's a very narrow little groove right here. And all of these depths and distances are super specific, and they have to be just right for it to sound well, for it to sound good. And then the air gets forced over that channel, and right here is where the sound happens. Now, because there's a pre-chamber, there's a lot more air, there's a lot more volume here than can fit through this narrow little channel at a time. And so that makes back pressure. There's a lot of musical instruments that utilize back pressure. Another one very classically is didgeridoo. Well, classically to some, I guess. I play the didgeridoo and it functions on back pressure. And that back pressure in the flute allows us to do a lot of the percussive, blasting kind of sharp pitched sounds that you can't really get on a whistle. For example, a whistle, like a penny whistle, a tin whistle, doesn't have that pre-chamber, and so you can't do a lot of the same sounds which make these flutes so nice and fun. Now, that's just a little bit of backstory. This cap has a straight vertical face right here, and that cap needs to be lined up just exactly in vertical alignment with the vertical face that's right here, right before the sharp little ramp where the sound happens. Now, this is not permanently glued on, and it has the capacity to slide around. Maybe it slides around in your bag a little bit as you're transitioning it. So before you play, you just always want to go in there and take a look and make sure that that's lined up just perfectly. Yes. Now, both vertically this way, as well as you want to not have the cap slid off to the left or the right, framing these little channels right over the gaps in the flute. Quite intuitive there. Now, these are real leather straps, and they can stretch over time, so you do want to make sure that that gets really nice and tight. And yeah, I'll cut to a close-up of how to tie those, and you might need to tighten that from time to time. I put on new straps when you get your new flute, and I do my best to pre-tighten them, but that can stretch out, and you might need to take that off and retighten that, very rarely, but occasionally. Now, I finish my flutes in such a way where you shouldn't really ever need to refinish them on the inside or on the outside. I call this a lifetime finish on the flute, and some people will say that you can put oil in here or something of that nature to refinish it over time. You really shouldn't need that with the level of use that you'll likely be doing with your flute. If you ever need to, I recommend that you reach out to me, and if you really want to know how to do that, it is something maybe in 10-15 years, one more coat wouldn't hurt, but you really shouldn't need to. If you really scrape it up, it goes through this massive damage and you want to know how to re-steel it, re-protect it, feel welcome to reach out to me and we can talk about that then. Yep, so I'm going to tie this back on there and then we're going to go on to the next steps. All right, so you thread all of your leather straps through your top block, and I like to have the polished side on the outside, and I'll typically do this here just on my lap. And I start with the middle one. You can start whichever one you want, really. Make them relatively equal lengths like this, and give that a good amount of little pressure, squeezing them together. And you're going to do a square knot, so that's alternating which lead crosses over. So right now the left side is crossing over the right. Make that pretty dang tight, but not so tight that you're going to break that leather. It can take a lot of load, but not too much. So keeping that pressure down on my thumb. And this time I crossed my right lead over, and then you really snug that knot down as tight as you can possibly get it, and there shouldn't really be any play to the cord. So let's do that again. This comes up, left over right, nice and tight, right over left. One little technique, if you like, get your teeth in there just to get it down, and then cinch that knot in nice and tight. We can do that again on this one. Do, 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 do. See how I let go of that a little bit before the knot was cinched, and we had a little bit of slack, more than I want. So I'm going to redo that, and I'm going to do the teeth method because it works pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to flip that over, and you can see that this is no longer in the spot that it's supposed to be. I can just slide that over until it's where it needs to be, and then I'll get my leather straps just so that they're straight, coming straight off of the top cap. Okay, it's pretty snug, it's pretty on there. Yes, okay, very good.